The local council manages a commercial kitchen at the back of the hall I'm heading to. It was previously owned by a lodge or business association and now hosts senior citizens meetings. My friend Tim, the advertising photographer, has invited me to join him. He's provided me with details about the people and situation. I'm intrigued, but I'm not sure if it's something I want to do. Frankly, I'm not totally comfortable with the idea. Not that I haven't been feeling adrift, now that I'm alone again. My last girlfriend having departed in a puff of nothing, and an empty section of the wardrobe, the bathroom and parts of the furniture. Now I'm standing in the rear car park, feeling a light drizzle dampening my clothes and chilling me. My breath is visible in the air as I look towards the kitchen entrance, illuminated by a warm glow. Looking around the car park, there are about 8 spaces and 3 cars, although 2 of the spots are occupied by a large white van, a big people mover. I hope I'm in the right place. I trekked over from the closest train station, my thick jacket and heavy boots keeping me warm against the damp suburban streets. Rugged up, as Tim said. I'll be spending most of the night outdoors. I peek in through the kitchen door, which is open but the screen door is latched. I need to get someone's attention. In the centre of the room, a large central bench area is surrounded by several people working diligently. Benches, sinks and cooking ranges line the walls, forming the efficient workspace of a commercial kitchen. I don't feel socially awkward, as the people look pretty relaxed and unthreatening. All cardigans and goodness. Volunteers, casual home clothes. Tim says the first part of the night is all camaraderie and social. Later is where you need your wits. Maybe I've overdressed. Though I can see jackets and such, hung up on a stand. And Tim was pretty definite about the outside part. No forms have been filled out. Tim just said,
"Hey, do you want to come along? You'd be really helpful."
I accepted because it was him. I'm not in a good place at the moment. It's not just the breakup. 3 weeks ago, I got attacked by a nutcase trying to kill me, and I'm trying to go with the flow. Maybe I'm still a bit nervy, though I don't want to let these experiences stop me from living. I judge the books by their covers and take in the aspects of the people, stopping my musing to rap on the screen door to get someone's attention. It's not a convincing noise. The door is a little loose, so it absorbs my rap and converts it into the weaker sound of the screen frame, rattling rhythmically against the housing. "Hello?" I sound off to give it some help. An older lady at the near end of the table looks up and comes over to the door, capturing the room's attention.
"Oh, you're Tim's friend,"
she says, working it out.
"Sometimes we get customers coming to the back door, so we have to keep it latched for safety. Otherwise, they'd be right in here with us. I'm Sue. Come on in."
She flicks the small latch and I step back to let her push the door outwards. The smell that hits me is bread, and lots of it. It's piled up on the workbench. There are a few wicker baskets containing freshly made rolls and sandwiches. It's early yet, so the baskets are only partially filled. "Wow, where did you get all this bread?" I say, feeling a bit foolish for that being my introduction to the group.
"It's donated,"
Sue says.
"The bakery near me has to sell fresh bread every day. So at the end of the day, this would have all gone in the dumpster. It's today's bread. I drove over at closing time and picked up 6 garbage bags worth. It's always roughly that amount."
"That must be going on all over the city," I think out loud. "Think of all that food just going into landfill."
"We just have to do what we can."
Sue laments as they continue making sandwiches.
"All of the things we'll make tonight are all in date. Just no one can sell them. See that big doorway over there?"
Sue says, gesturing towards a large space that I can see shelves in.
"Come have a look."
We walk through the door into a large pantry, and there's an amazing amount of food. There's tea, instant coffee, pressed hams, catering packs of cheese slices, tins of tuna, spreads, bottles of cordial concentrate, sugar, margarine, drink packs and biscuits.
"All of this has been donated,"
says Sue.
"It's all perfectly good, and if it didn't come here, it would go to waste."
I'm in Narnia, and the Snow Queen has just offered me Turkish delight. Tim has told me Sue's story. She used to be a nun, left, got married, and then widowed. I think she's about 60 or so. Tim says she's tough out on the street, though she faces it with a good heart.
"We're on a bit of a schedule, so let's get back to it,"
she says, and we go back into the other room. I'm expecting questions, though none are coming. I think Tim's recommendation may be, or another thing, faith. As we come back into the main kitchen area, a lady is slicing a large catering loaf of ham. The slicing wheel turns, and the thin slices drop onto a plate positioned to catch them. That plate is moved to the bench as another takes its place in the assembly line. Sue gestures in turn to the people around the table.
This is Gillian. This is Raywin.
Motioning to the lady who has just turned from her slicing duties.
And Stephen,
she says, motioning at a young man furthest from me. I nod to each one in turn and introduce myself, though nobody stops working. They're on a schedule.
Of course you know Tim,
she says as he comes out of the side room carrying an extremely large metal stockpot. It's about 1/2 metre tall with 2 handles. He puts it down on the bench next to an 8-burner range and comes over to shake my hand. Hey mate, how's it going? I offer him the standard greeting.
Pretty good.
Tim gives back.
Why don't you give Tim a hand, and then you can come back and help us with the sandwiches?
Sue says. It seems like a plan, so Tim and I head over to the cooking range. Did you finish that catalogue shoot for the bakery? I asked him to catch up.
Yeah, it took a long time. We had to get Deb in to do the food styling. Took us ages to fix the meat falling out of the pie.
He answers. Really? I ask.
Yeah. Deb finally got it looking great. She sprayed it with a fine mist of glue to get the perfect shot. It looks great on the proof sheet. After that, the client wants beads of water on the donut icing to indicate freshness. She sprayed something from another bottle and then sprayed water. Et voila! Perfectly beaded water drops. You see the same effect on soda ads.
Tim explains. Mate, sorry to hear. I thought with all that bakery gear you'd be in pies and donuts for a month, I say.
No such luck. After the shoot, it's all cactus. Totally inedible. Even the whipped cream is shaving foam.
He says with a look of bemused resignation.
Still, it's a gig, right?
With that exclamation, he laughs, and I find it too hard not to join in.
Hey, I went on a date with a girl I met at church,
says Tim. Tim always talks about finding a girlfriend. A lot. Though in the 6 years I've known him, he hasn't even talked about a date he's actually been on. Until now. What's her name? I inquire.
Carla,
he says.
I was helping her set up for a youth group function. I didn't really have to ask her out. We'd been spending a lot of time together at church. We ended up having meals together, and after a couple of weeks, I think we're together.
I see how it is, in a real, though grey area of unfolding probabilities. I think that's how it should be. When things are real, they're alive like Schrodinger's cat leaping out of the box for a handful of cat bicks. Tim's always upbeat. He's an advertising photographer and geek, with a passion for 80s music, even though it's 1999. His music collection is shoulder-padded and big-haired. He isn't. Just a jeans and t-shirt guy from the suburbs, intensely religious. Good for you, man, I say. What are you doing?
I'm making the soup. You can give me a hand if you want,
he says, waving a gesture across the materials needed. I don't see any ingredients I'm expecting, like onions, carrots, and potatoes to start with. I don't know what soup he's going to make. I'm stumped, so I ask, what ingredients do we need?
Let's start with the water. See this large stock pot? Fill that 2/3 full of water and place it on the burner. I'll get the soup.
He'll get the soup? Okay. The other side of the room has 2 commercial-sized sinks, and I place the 1/2-metre-high stock pot just under the tap that is deep enough for the purpose. I turn the water on full and start filling it to 2/3. As I do this, Tim's friend Natalie arrives, says her hellos, and makes a beeline for me. We have history. Not romantic. Okay, sort of romantic. Tim, history. We've met up at 3 of his 80s parties, and it's obvious we see the Earth differently. We have chemistry. The only problem, I think it's sulfur and oxygen, and at the end, everything stinks. The water's running into the pot, and she talks over the noise of it.
Hi. I told Tim that I didn't think you'd come tonight. I didn't think it would be your thing.
Well, the night's still young, I quip.
Still Mr. Funny then?
She says, looking bemused. Natalie's a third-year law student, and it could be the study that's making her very serious, though it's something else as well.
We have to talk about the other night,
she says. I know exactly what she's talking about. The other night at Tim's 80s party, we were in a mildly heated discussion about some political issue. In the middle of our discussion, she leant forward and kissed me, snaking one arm around my shoulders. It's a complete ninja move. Taken by surprise, I just let it happen. Not much more of the party unfolded before we ended up back at my apartment. She'd left very early the next morning, and this is the first time I've seen her since.
Look, about the other night. I'm at a critical stage in my studies, and I'm not looking for a boyfriend. The other night was fun, though I'm not sure about anything.
She blurts it out like a very rehearsed speech read too fast. I'm pretty perplexed by it nevertheless, though all I can get out is, sure. How I might feel about anything is missing in action. She goes over to the table and starts helping the crew there make sandwiches. The stock pot is now filled with the 2/3 water required, so I call out to Tim, who comes over, and it takes both of us to get the stock pot onto the range. We place it over a burner at the front. It's gas, so Tim lights it and steps back as the flame whooshes into being. He turns it up as far as it will go, and a circular jet of blue flame starts on the underside of the pot. What now? I ask Tim.
See that tin over there?
He points to a tall lidded canister that looks like it could contain coffee or powdered milk. On the outside it says, beef and vegetable soup mix. Oh, I say, realising that the soup is going to be packet.
8 heap scoops with this.
He says, handing me the scoop he's plucked off the wall.
Into the water, then mix it up. Once it boils for a bit, then it should be ready to go.
In Tim's photography world, it's all glamorous advertising work, where even the steam coming off the bowl is taken at the perfect moment. What was I expecting? Time to make a mental adjustment.
I'll keep an eye on this,
says Tim.
We can jump in and help with the sandwiches.
Sue has been working at one end, cutting the mostly rolls in half. Gillian and Natalie are buttering them, and Raywin is keeping a steady supply of ham. They've got a system, though Tim and I are able to slot in. We do a bit of everything to construct simple bread rolls with butter, ham, and some with cheese. There are no condiments or salad. There is also a selection of buns and cakes. It's all made to work to a schedule. We talk as we work. I find out that Gillian is a stay-at-home mother of 2, and Raywin works in an office in town as an administrative assistant. Stephen is an apprentice mechanic. Everything is punctuated by the production line. Once we get near having every basket full, they are each covered with a tea towel to keep them fresh. An urn contains coffee and another boiling water, and these are carefully poured into 2 sides of a weird metal contraption with 2 distinct sections. It can dispense tea from one side and coffee from the other. The smell of the soup starts to waft through the kitchen. The soup is ready, and Tim uses a large ladle and funnel filling 18 large vacuum flasks. It's been almost 2 hours since I arrived at 7. It's dark outside, and there's still some light rain I can see from the falling droplets illuminated in the outside light.
Excuse me,
comes a voice from the other side of the screen, a person outside the door half shaded in the night.
May I please have some soup?
Sure, mate,
Tim says as he separates a paper cup from the stack he's prepared. Grabbing one of the bun flasks, he decants some soup into the cup and grabs one of the sandwiches out of the basket.
Here you go, mate,
he says, opening the screen and handing the items to the man standing there.
Thanks,
the man says, and starts to walk away, already taking a bite of his sandwich and then sipping the soup.
People know we're here making the soup, so we get a few visitors,
says Sue. There are a couple of other people out there as well, a lady and a man, who seem like they came together, so the act is repeated. It's getting time to go out, and in the last 2 hours the crew have prepared 14 baskets of sandwiches, 6 baskets of buttered cakes, cordial for 200 people, soup for 200 people, the tea and coffee urn, sugar, cups and stirrers. Sue goes outside to open the back of the van. She is also the designated driver, and she has the keys. We join her outside, transferring everything, ready to lock up the hall and get going. She opens it up, and I can see that the storage area has been modified. Stephen and I help with the strange rectangular double urn, which is full and heavy. It fits snugly into the angle iron rack that has been built into the van. There is a system in operation here. I help carry various items to pack the van. The rain is still drizzling, so we're being as quick as we can. I carry some things with Natalie. She doesn't bring anything else up. She will make a great lawyer. This is the crew of soup vanners for Sunday night. They go out and deliver soup, sandwiches, cordial, tea and coffee to people. They are all volunteers. They all have their reasons for doing it. We're packed and ready to go. Everybody piles in the van with Sue in the driver's seat. Stephen gets in the passenger seat next to Sue. Everyone else is on 2 facing bench seats accessible from a sliding door on the side. Some of the needed items are on the floor between us, overflowing from the modified carry area. There are also some donated blankets to hand out. The rain is picking up a little as we turn out of the suburban street onto the main road. City lights blink and flash, and a thin drip of water seeps in between the seal of the door. The van smells of coffee, tea, bread and soup. Though mostly bread, everything else is pretty much sealed up. The radio is on, and tuned to a top 40 station, the latest hits blaring out. The soup vanners are all gossiping and chatting about their week and the one to come. Sunday night and tomorrow marks another working week. The traffic noise will be pretty light around the first stops. However, it will get heavier as we move on to the centre of the city. Sue has described the route to everyone, and Stephen has taped a list of the stops we need to make to the glove compartment. The van has some limited air conditioning. However, opening and closing the door during the night will give that a run for its money. If I weren't here right now, I would be sitting at home wondering what to do with my time. My mind is currently occupied with both the social situation and the job at hand. As everyone talks, I learn that this is only one of 7 crews that take this van out every night of the week. We are the Sunday crew. Every night, the same process is repeated. It runs on almost no money, so most of the gear is donated and somewhat battered from its former glory. Sue gives the talk before the first stop, for the benefit of newcomers, in this case, me.
We'll go in pairs. Remember to wash your hands every time you come back to the van. Not everyone's hygiene is being kept up. Keep an eye out for each other and let me know of any issues as soon as you can.
Sue obviously respects the people she's trying to help. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing it. She's a pragmatist and realises that there can also be risks. I don't know how they know who to help. Sue knows, and maybe that has come from up high. I mean from the charity. Without them, who would be doing it? Gillian and Raywin sing along to the various top 40 tunes on the radio, in amongst talking. Steve sits tensely in the passenger seat. Tim is going on about his new girlfriend Carla to Natalie. I join in the conversation every so often, though mostly I curiously watch the streets go by through the lights and the drops of rain on the windows. At one point, Natalie looks at me and our eyes meet. A wry smile comes over her face and I'm transfixed for a moment until we go over a bump and the moment is broken. We arrive at our first stop, some flats on the edge of the city. I notice the talking mostly dies down as everyone gets ready for action. We're in the north of the city in a reasonably well-to-do suburb. Across the road is a very upmarket housing estate. Although this looks like a regular block of flats, the gardens and a mattress left upright against a fence hint at a different story. The avenue along the fence goes back a fair way into the darkness. I estimate there's about 14 to 15 separate apartments in this block, all single stories. There's a lot of foliage, and the brickwork is that grey rendered style, covered in moss that makes everything look damp, especially in the light drizzle.
There's a guy here, living in a caravan at the back of the lane.
Sue lets us know.
We've had reports. He abuses the soup van crews most nights. So just knock on the door and leave something for him outside.
I ask Sue, does that happen much?
It varies. Most people don't have any reaction. We're just part of the experience. Some are grateful, some are abusive. It doesn't make sense, except to say that many people are in dire situations. There are those with mental problems, and those on something. We keep it simple. We've got one main problem to solve: hunger. We do what else we can with what we've got.
She leaves it at that. I'm paired up with Raywin, and we both grab flasks of soup and a basket of sandwiches, which I carry. She gives me a here we go smile, and we go into the lane. The other soup vanners pair up, Tim and Natalie, Gillian and Steve with gear, and we split up. Sue stays with the van. Raywin and I get to our first door. She raps on it and yells, "Van!" With the soup van going out every night, the longer-term residents must know what to expect.
Come in.
We hear, and I have to open the door myself. This I do slowly, as I'm a bit nervous. We're greeted by the sight of 5 men sitting on run-down sofas and chairs around a low table containing several bottles and flagons, even a cask. They all seem to be quite drunk, yet they have a cheerful demeanour. In some places, I notice half-devoured sandwiches from the night before. I can smell the smell of old bread.
"Any sandwiches or soup?"
says Raywin. One of the blokes answers.
"All round, ma'am, if you please."
He has a very British voice. So British that one could imagine him as a regimental sergeant major, fallen on hard times. Despite his inebriation, his manners are impressive. Raywin dispenses sandwiches, and I pour soup into plastic cups. From the flask slung over my shoulder, I pour it a centimetre or so below the rim. It's hot, though not enough to burn anyone. We get some thanks all round. They laugh as we close the door and leave them to their meal. It goes like that the next 4 times, with varying people, mostly just opening the door a little bit, and getting some soup and sandwiches. We arrive at the grey caravan, up on bricks at the same time as Tim and Natalie. Tim knocks on the door, and before he can say anything, a voice says,
"Just leave it outside then."
We leave a buttered iced bun, 2 sandwiches and a cup of soup. Tim says,
Must have had his medication.
and leaves it at that. We get back to the van and Sue asks us for a count of whom we think we've seen. She has a logbook, numbers of people, what we gave out, and any issues. We get back in the van and move on to the next place. The next stop is a hostel run by a major charity organisation. It's very well appointed in a 1980s kind of way. It's built on 2 levels, and I estimate there would be about 40 apartments, including a women's section clearly signposted. I pair up with Raywin again. The front door to the complex is unlocked, and again our 3 teams carry flasks of soup over our shoulders and baskets of sandwiches. We've got a basket each this time, as there are more doors to get round. It is a regular call of soup van, and some doors open and some don't. One of the doors opens, and there is a man holding a carving knife in a stabbing position. We step back reflexively, and he just goes back inside, closing the door. I look at Raywin. How often does that happen?
First time for me.
She answers. Me too, I say, and somehow that breaks the tension. At one door, a woman answers. I take a step backwards, out of reflex from before, though also as the smell of the room inside is very strong. It's a mix of a lot of things, and I don't want to try and identify them. Her dress is thin and dirty, with the visible dirt starting an arm's length from her waist and getting darker towards the hem. She looks forlorn. On the bed which fills the room is a man with his leg up on the bed and one leg on the floor. They are lost in this situation. We feed them some soup and sandwiches. As we go round, some people do want to talk to us, and we get thanks, anger, and everything in between. Getting outside the front door, a young guy is coming towards me and gets a bit too close for my liking. He pushes his arm out and says,
Hey mate, are you guys able to dispose of these?
He's holding 2 syringes with the caps missing, with the pointy ends towards my face. Nah, sorry, this is just a soup van, mate. We don't do that. Tim comes over, and he gives me a bit of backup. I don't think the guy is aggressive, though it's always good to make sure. My count is now 2 sharp instrument incidents on my first night. We move on to the next place. This one is also just outside the city and is a bit dingier than the last one. We pair up again and do our thing, dispensing soup and sandwiches. A man comes to the door. He introduces himself as Ken, and he lives with Kate, who is his girlfriend. There is a smell of something I remember from visiting friends backstage at their band shows. Ken is a good talker, pretty easygoing guy, and we talk for a bit.
Hey, what do you reckon about this?
He says, showing me his right forearm. There is a kind of semi-sealed gash along the length of it, scabbed over and yellowy, and the arm is swollen and angry looking. That looks a bit nasty, mate. I think you should go to a doctor right away. I'm pretty worried seeing the state of his arm.
Should be all right.
He says way too casually. I ask carefully, how did you do that, mate? And Ken answered,
Well, you know.
At that moment, I realise it's self-inflicted. I fight down my bit of shock, fighting to keep my focus.
Come outside with us, Ken.
Says Raywin.
We'll see if Sue can sort something out.
I'm not sure how Sue can help, though I go with Raywin's suggestion. When we get Ken outside, Sue does have it in hand.
We'll change our schedule around. We normally stop off at the hospital. We'll go there right now and take Ken with us.
It happens. We get in the van and we bundle Ken in with us. It's a big call. We don't really know him well, and anything could happen. That arm looks awful, though. When we get to the hospital stop, Sue parks the van in the car park and locks it. We all bundle out, and Sue and Tim take Ken to the emergency room. I've given them the details and where he lives. Sue says we'll check in on the way back. After the hospital, we continue to the town hall. People congregate around the time they think the soup van will be coming by. We're a bit later tonight from changing our run to take Ken to the hospital.
You guys are a bit late.
One guy says as we pull up. Sue says something to the guy out of the driver's side window. I don't catch it, though the tone is just. Oh well. Raywin tells me.
People think that we're paid to do this by the government. Every so often, we get someone who tells us off for not doing our job. We just take it in stride.
I'm getting a good picture of the balance of circumstance and choice. Clients and soup vanners. This stop marks a change, as we now dispense everything from the back of the van. And this includes tea and coffee from the mobile urn, and cordial as well. My role transforms into helper, crowd control, and conversationalist. People want to tell me their stuff, so I just listen to it. Some of it's just polite conversation, other parts of it are the wrong end of the stick. It washes over. There is a sad seagull analogy where there are some people around the edge, outside of the more aggressive inner circle. I push through that inner circle to make sure that those people get something as well. I'm asked questions. I don't answer anything of a personal nature or offer to give out contact details. Some of the questions are about social services, and we have to let them know that we're nothing to do with the government or any of those programs. We're just about the soup. Gillian tells me when she was first on the van, a guy found out her address, and although it was mild, there was an element of stalking about it. It did freak her out. I can understand wanting to help. There's a family group here today, and you wonder what their story is. Another guy in the crowd pulls out a mobile phone. Those are only coming into vogue for most business people. Strange that this guy has one. I assume to myself that it's stolen and then chastise myself for the assumption, even though I still feel it. The next 3 hostels follow the same pattern of sandwich, soup, cordial, tea, and coffee and buns. There are junkies, kids, drunks, the mentally challenged, the dispossessed, the lonely, and the old. It's an awful mixture of choice and injustice in varying degrees. Always there's that smell of sandwiches and bread, either in the van or left from previous days in the rooms. We visit a men's hostel that is no boozing, no noise, clean and quiet, with a certain dignity not found in some other places. The walls are decorated with various examples of 1970s macrame, the dust on them giving them an authentic patina of age. Seeing these artworks fills me with a deeper dread than anything else I have seen tonight. Natalie starts talking to me.
We've got 4 more stops. The back of the markets, the apartments in town, the main city street, and finally, the drug hostel. Are you okay?
Sure. I say not sure at all.
You're doing really well. Hang in there.
She says, putting a hand on my shoulder for emphasis. At the markets, people are using the overhang outside the closed sheds for shelter. Natalie tells me that once the permits come through, this will be redeveloped and the tenants moved on. The main city street is a bit nasty. It's mostly drug kids who hurl abuse at us and try to mess us about. They do odd things like flanking us to get into the van and see if there's anything to steal. Not connected to that noise, Stephen is handing a young man a roll, which he takes. Stephen is talking to him when the man suddenly gets angry. He starts yelling at Stephen and does a strange dance. He points at Stephen and says,
"You're fucked now, mate."
Stephen is so shocked that he has to go sit back in the van for a moment. He's okay, he just needs a moment. The man goes off down the street, though the experienced members of the van's crew take it in stride. Stephen comes out of the van and says,
I think I'm helping giving a guy a sandwich, though I'm also just pissing him off. And I think I understand it. I can stop the hunger, though the situation, it's just broken.
We all just get back in the van. Finally, we get to our last stop, the drug hostel. It's 12 midnight, and we still have to clean up back at the hall. We have been going since 7. Sue drives us into the car park, and this is yet another example where she takes charge. The people from the hostel are all in the car park to greet the soup van, and they surge forward like it is a riot. They want to get in first to get soup and sandwiches. Sue has to tell them firmly.
Now, everyone will get a turn, though we need you to keep away. We'll serve you.
It's confronting. We run out of everything. Particularly the cordial is a big winner here, the sugar. That's it, no more stuff. We're pretty beat, yet we still have to check on some things and clean up. Sue drives us back to the hall, where we unpack all the empty baskets, flasks and containers. She rings the hospital emergency department, and it takes a few minutes. She inquires about Ken, and after a bit more gets some news. After the yes, yes, thank yous, she fills us in.
They've admitted Ken to the hospital for observation. They said that if his arm had been left in its condition, it could have gone gangrenous, and he might have died. I'll call someone in the morning and get them to follow up, so he can come home when he's better. I'll also have the Monday night vanners let his girlfriend know what's happening. Now, let's clean up and we can leave here.
The clean-up is hard. All the flasks have to be washed and rinsed to remove any trace of soup. The slicing machine, stock pot, mobile urn, knives and everything else must be pristine and ready for the next day's van. The floor is mopped, and all the benches cleaned down with disinfectant and detergent. It takes about an hour and a half. Sue updates the logbook with the final numbers, activities and situations. Gillian, Raywin and Steve go off at varying points at the end of the clean-up. Everyone is done. Sue thanks me and asks if I would like to come again next Sunday. I tell her I will let her know. Tim and I have a job we're doing later next week, and he says,
See you on Thursday, and thanks for coming along, mate.
And with that, he goes over to sort some stuff out with Sue. I don't feel like a saint. I just feel terrible. I've put a band-aid on a gaping wound. I was already reeling from my own problems, though in the face of tonight, I just can't muster any enthusiasm for them. Even the attack seems far off in the distance. Natalie is beside me.
You did well tonight. Would you like me to give you a lift home?
She says, putting an arm around my shoulder. It's a caring gesture as well as something else. Some of what I'm thinking is clearly written on my face.
Do you want to come over?
She offers. Yes, I'd like that, I say gently. And with that, we head out into the car park.
This experiment explored the potential of AI generative voices by using a story and accompanying visuals. The audio was stitched together in Logic X Professional and the visuals in Adobe Premiere, with some swearing included.